Prakash Diwan is also joining us. Prakash also was sounding a bit cautious in terms of risk rewards, etc. Prakash, so finally we've got a bit of a breather. That's about it, right? I mean, under 1%. That's it. How would you approach things now?
Absolutely, Prashant. So I think the market's texture has been very clear. I mean, dips have been bought, people have made money. But now if you see post the earnings season, there are not many triggers domestically also that could support this kind of a thing. And there is whole a question mark around valuations in India being a bit expensive. Things are getting slightly more or toppish. So all of that is kind of leading to a little bit of that pause. But I'm sure bottom up there'll always be opportunity, especially this whole addition of manufacturing as a sector, defense as an addition. All of that's kind of adding to some more space. So that's where the interest levels will continue to grow. But selectively, market will probably plod along if not correct deeply immediately.
Okay, Prakash, good afternoon. I just want to discuss one stock with you, but before that, let's just pull out PVR's chart for today. And today, of course, the market is also down, so you could blame it on that. But in general, the stock chart is clearly telling you something. I mean, if you look at the chart of PVR over the last 2 weeks or so, not 12 months, 1 week I think will be important. Today is down, of course, 4%, but 1 week chart if we can pull out on PVR, I think it's down 14% for this week, maybe 14 or 15%. And there it is. That's the chart I was referring to. Now there have been some, remember our chat that we had with Ajay Bijli, where we spoke about there have been only 3 certified blockbusters this year. If you're looking at the pure Hindi content, Kashmir Files, there was Gangubai Karyawadi, and of course there was Bhool Bhulaiya too. And then of course there are South movies dubbed into Hindi which have done really well, but pure Hindi content and the kind of rejection that we have seen of some big movies, the Lal Singh Chadha and Raksha Bandhan. So first let's hear out what Karan Taurani has to make of the recent moves, and then I'll take Prakash beyond that.
Q2 broadly is going to be a very bad quarter as compared to Q1. So you have a decline here, versus Q1Q, and you also have a decline here versus pre-COVID levels. So our estimate is that you could see a box office revenue decline of at least 30 to 35% this quarter versus pre-COVID levels. And this is primarily because of large films not doing well. Most of the films have kind of done even lower than our collection estimates, which were already below par. What has happened here is that clearly one was thinking that the backlog of content is going to work very favorably for the cinema chains. But I think that is kind of backfired now, because most of this backlog are films which are probably slated to release 3 years ago. And since the last 3 years, because of the pandemic, we are seeing a big shift in terms of the consumption and the kind of content the audience wants to watch. Q3, there might be some rebound on a Q1Q basis, but again, when we compare that to pre-COVID, there won't be much of a huge growth that we're expecting, because there are films lined up in Diwali as well. There are films, lined up during the New Year and Christmas season as well. But I am expecting a stronger rebound only towards Feb March, because usually what happens is that, we've seen this in the past as well. I mean, when Bahubali came in, you saw a huge series of flops by large actors. And things actually started to pick up, 2 to 3 quarters down the line, when a lot of the producer directors kind of recheck their strategy. So I think we are at the same time right now, where you'll see 2 to 3 quarter of transition, and maybe from here on the 3rd or 4th quarter onwards, you will see some uptick. Q1, we did a growth of about 13%, 13 to 15% in terms of box office revenue for Hindi. And for the multiplexes, this number was lastly around 20 or 18 to 20 odd percent. But you have to note one thing here: whatever growth that came in, it only came because of ticket prices. So ticket prices have moved up in the range of 15 to 25% for both the exhibitors, whereas the footfalls are still down close to 10 to 12% versus pre-COVID levels. So all these comparisons are basis pre-COVID levels. I think next quarter, what you're going to see is that we are expecting a 35% decline as compared to pre-COVID levels. So maybe the ticket prices will sustain with a growth of 10-12%.
Okay, now Prakash, you've tracked this space. Clearly, they've got it something wrong here. And I'm just looking at there's a movie which is released today, apparently called Dobara. I'm just looking at the star cast, and just looking at the movie, the dynamics. I'm looking at the prices: 500, 550 rupee tickets for evening shows. nobody's going to watch that, right? What's going on here? And what do you do with a stock like PVR after the kind of rally that we have seen?
No, you're absolutely right, Anuj. And I remember you also kind of educating people on how bad things were at one point in time in terms of, you brought that to notice in one of your tweets also, and that trend has been fairly strong now, with OTT having such high levels of acceptance. And when people wanted to go back to the movies, watch them in the cineplexes, they did that for a while. So you saw a little bit of that revival. And of course, it was coinciding with the launch of some of the bigger names and the most successful blockbusters of the recent past. But what's going to change is the OTT gives you multiple options. You're not stuck for 3 hours with a movie that starts off on a bad note, right? You start a movie and I asked a lot of people on preferences. And this is one of the biggest reasons why OTT is here to stay. It's going to have an impact. In the pandemic, the costs have gone up. Footfalls after consolidation, you really don't know how they're going to be able to utilize in terms of efficiencies.
Okay, I think we lost Prakash. We'll just try to repatch that line. But Prashant, this has really been a dry spell. I just remember this conversation that we had with Ajay Bijli. In some sense, it's better to have some smaller films priced reasonably than have all these big movies. And,
absolutely. I remember pressing him again and again on this point of no real large hits, Bollywood hits. And he said, well, I remember he used a phrase called sleeper hits. Suddenly out of the blue, you have a sleeper hit which will make up for all the things which are not doing well. But at the end of the day, people have to walk into the cinema theaters wanting to watch a great movie,
exactly.
Right? If that is not happening, then you've got a problem. That's a basic issue. But it seemed like the stock had reached what, almost
2100,
2200. Yeah. And there has always been, and Prakash's point is well taken, there has always been this concurrently moving threat from OTTs. But that didn't stop the stock from reaching 2200. But I think this trigger of last few releases, large big budget Bollywood movies not really making the cut and getting a very tepid response, I think has just pushed it over the edge. I mean, it would be lovely to sort of have the PVR management talk to us and tell us what's happening from their perspective, and we'll try and do that. Invite them on the program. Prakash is back with us. Prakash, sorry, you got cut off there. Go on. Just finish that point.
Yeah, so the point I was trying to make is that, the acceptance of OTT is a very significantly impactful trend for all these names. And as I was saying, the cost in the pandemic has gone up. And after consolidation, there could be some time when the transition could take, the assimilation of energies and efficiencies. And in that period, you'll have a lot of the smaller names take away market share also. So it's going to be tricky. The road ahead is definitely very challenging for them. Especially the valuations don't permit any kind of an error of commission rather than omission at this point. So I think you'll have to be careful with this stock. It could lose some more ground on bad days as well.
Okay, all right. Anything else on your radar, Prakash? I mean, any other names which you're watching? Zomato, for example, has had a big move. I mean, the block deal got done at 50 rupees. It moved up to what? I mean, I think 65, 70 or so. Back at about 62. I mean, anything else on your radar?
No, so Zomato, of course, is getting more interesting by the day with new participant looking at the narrative, which is freshly different. But the important thing is in this space, if you look at the QSR space or probably even the dining space, outbound dining space, I refer to Barbecue Nation sometime back, and I think that's an interesting business along with some of the burger chains, which is telling you that people want to continue using what they were used to or consuming what they were used to in a format that also gives them that whole outing experience. So it's working very well. The numbers have started improving after a long time. Post the IPO, we saw some sort of a setback, but looks like things are getting in place from the channel checks that I've done, and even the financials have started turning around the corner. So if that happens, you'd probably be better off investing in something which is lesser owned or under owned or discovered at this point in time.
Yeah, last weekend actually I had a meal there in Barbecue Nation, and I mean it's one of my favorites. So just a coincidence, by the way. Well, the market has cut its losses a bit. The Nifty, which was down 200, is now down 164. It's still down, but really, I mean, just look at Adani Ports. It's up 5.5%. It's been a stunning month for Adani Group stocks, Prakash. And what do you do with some of these names? Adani Ports, Adani Enterprises. It's just gravity-defying moves continue.
So not surprised, Anuj, for the simple reason that, Adani Enterprises is getting into so many newer businesses that there is no way you could have anticipated the way the complexion has changed so dramatically. I mean, it's no more the same business that you used to look at when let's say it was closer to $700-800. It was just a couple of businesses under the ownership of this company, and we were very clear how those were riding. But it's the whole smattering of new areas that capital has been allocated to or is likely to get allocated to, and which will start making such a significant contribution. So that's how the stock is kind of, I mean, that's the only way to explain how it's expanded so much on the P multiple as well, right? But the port business, I think, continues to be one of the best in class in terms of, the scale and the quality of the equipment that they use, the turnaround time. So all of that, and especially some of these acquisitions that they're making in these DFS and all these freight stations, those are very, very clearly going to be very positive for the business. So it's matching very well. And if you look at how growth can be generated in this segment, even in a dull era like what Concor did, you know how things could be so promising. So extremely positive on that at least. But enterprises is slightly out of reach from a valuation perspective as well.